Hello everyone, thanks for joining me back on StubbleMeetsSteel. Well, it's time to yet again revisit the Wolfman Guerrilla razor. And if you have keen eyes, you'll see that the base plate on this is not green like my other ones. Well, you know what that means, it's something different. Well, my awesome friend Chris that had suggested that I try this razor, this is his .84 plate. And when I was originally researching this razor, I'm gonna admit that the 8.4 plate I thought was gonna be way too spicy for me, and even he himself, when he first started using it, wasn't really sure what to make of it. And then he kind of wound up coming full circle and was like, I'm gonna send that plate to you to try because it's just something different and unique. And so the 8.4 plate, I'll have to look up the blade exposure measurement. I can't remember exactly what it is. I know it's more than the 0.69, but a razor that to me kind of felt like, as far as shaving experience wise, it was somewhat similar aggression wise as far as how it felt. And according to some gentlemen that I've spoken to, the Muhle Rocca is allegedly a 0.80 gap or right about there. So I felt that if that's truly true, then feel wise I would say that that's very accurate as far as that feels like what it should be, between like a 0.70 and a 0.80 gap wise. That's not an exact science, but to me they feel similar, and money wise they're similar. The Wolfman Guerrilla in the aluminum series is quote unquote affordable, and this one was about $125. Compared to their other offerings, that's cheap for a Wolfman. And in this particular color scheme, the Muhle Rocca with this birch handle as they call it, it usually retails for about $150. And so I realize these are, getting up there, but I felt like at least money-wise they're comparable, and gap-wise they kind of shave similarly. So let's kind of get into it today and see how they do head-to-head. For today's soap, this one is something kind of different, and somebody sent to me, and it really, really stood out to me. So I'm friends with Doug over at Adopted Acres Soap Company. He's a newer artisan that started, and he sells on Etsy. And he was, we were talking about, I wanted to kind of delve back into straight razors, and he's one of the people that I know that uses them all the time. And he was awesome, and he just offered to loan me some. And when he did, he sent me this particular soap. And I'll just flat out say that I've tried a bunch of different barbershop scents, and I kind of came to the conclusion, you know what, maybe John, I don't know that I like barbershop smells, because honestly, all the other ones that I've tried, like, none of them were terrible or made me gag or anything, but they just didn't really do much for me. I was indifferent about all the ones that I've tried. I've tried a bunch of the man scents from Sterling, and a bunch of other ones, and to each their own. I realize scent is an individual thing, but long story short, this is one of the first barbershop scents that just wowed me and really stood out to me as something special that I just really fell in love with. And I always like to do something kind of candidly with my family, and let my kids smell it, and my wife smell them and see what they think. And I don't really plant any seeds. I just basically pass it to them and say, do you like it first off? And then if you do like it, what does it smell like to you? And it's so fascinating to me to get their feedback. And this particular one, my 11-year-old and my wife both literally moaned, and my 11-year-old tried to literally steal it, and I tried to explain to her, like, it's not regular soap, you can't do anything with it. And so, she wasn't taking no for an answer, but she finally gave it back. And then it was funny, the other day in the morning, I came in and I was like, why is the lid of this soap off? And I opened it, and you can't see now, but she had put like 2 little fingerprints in there. So clearly she wanted to like get it on her fingers and smell it. And that's probably one of the only soaps that she's done that with. So, it just stands out as far as a scent. And it's not only stood out to me scent wise, but performance wise. So I've got it loaded up on my homemade brush here, which has a Maggard's soft knot in it. And let's get going here with the lather. So not only do I really like the smell of it, but what really stood out to me was the lather. It was super, super dense. Doug had sent me some samples when he was first starting out, before he had started selling them, and wanted my critique and criticism. And so one of the things on that sample that he had sent me ages back was, I said, for me, I'd like to see some more density and some more cushion. And he said that he put a lot of tallow in this, and boy, does it shine. This is probably one of the densest cushion soaps I think I've ever used. The density on this is definitely stood out to me, to where I messaged him right away. I'm like, whoa, what did you do to the base since we talked last time? I was like, whatever you did, you nailed it out of the park, man. And he said, yeah, I added a ton of tallow to it, because he is a straight razor shaver oftentimes. And if you've never straight razor shaved, you want as much cushion as you can get, because obviously there's no guard, there's no safety bar, it's straight blade on the face, gentlemen. So this soap really stands out to me for cushion, and it has a lot of slickness and residual slickness. Residual slickness, if you're not familiar, is when you rinse your face, or when there's no more soap left on your face, and you can take a little bit of water and just kind of put it on your face and rub it around, and all of a sudden there's slickness all over from the residual of soap that was left there. This has a lot of that, and I really like soaps that have that good residual slickness. So I'll add a little bit more water there. All right, I'm happy with that. For today's blades, I've got Colosso blades loaded up in both of these razors today. Let's go ahead and start off on the Wolfman side here. Very smooth, those couple of strokes there. And I obviously realize you're dealing with a heavy razor versus a lightweight razor, but they don't offer the Rocca in aluminum, so I don't know if you can hear, the Rocca has some of the most interesting audible feedback of any razor I think I've ever used. And it's interesting, when you rinse it, it doesn't have any lather channels, but it's like water gets trapped in there somewhere, and it creates the most interesting sound after you rinse it that first time, to me. But the water changes the acoustics. And it's interesting, I was talking to a pretty famous razor manufacturer, and he said that when he's been messing around with prototypes, he made a razor and left the lather channels off of it on accident, and he said it made no difference. And as far as rinsability, and the razor performed fine. And I have to say that the Rocca is definitely like that. It rinses flawlessly. If you know, you didn't point out that it had no lather channels, I probably wouldn't even have noticed as far as just on rinsing factor alone. But I think that the lack of lather channel adds to some of that audible feedback and unique sound that it has. Very nice pass. And look, I realize that this would have been more fair comparison to do against the Wolfman bronze or stainless, obviously, but those are well out of my tax bracket and I don't have those ones, so this is what I'm using. Wolfman was feeling extremely smooth today. Definitely feels like there's less blade feel on the Wolfman to me. I shaved yesterday, but I shaved much earlier than I normally do, so I have a few extra hours of growth than I normally would. A 3 o'clock shadow today instead of a 5 o'clock shadow, if you will. As my buddy Chris that loaned me this plate, and I mentioned before, the Wolfman really shines with no pressure at all. Just let the razor do its work. Just let it kind of slide and glide across the face. If you see you're pushing your skin down or in, then you're pushing too hard. And to make this one really shine, it likes a really light touch. Sometimes the lightweight razors want you to kind of push to get that efficiency. Not the case with the Wolfman, especially not with this A4 plate. That's a really nice pass. Very smooth. Some water in that. Hope some of that audible feedback is coming through for you guys on the audio with this Rocca. Because that's one of my favorite features of this razor, besides the awesome wood birch handle, is the audible feedback. Because it sounds like no other razor I've ever used before. It's got the very unique sound to it. All right, let's do the against the grain pass here. So dense, so much cushion. Dry that off. Don't think that I've used the Filoso blades with this A4 plate yet, and I have to say, not that I'm surprised, but very, very smooth. I purposely selected the Filosos because they're my favorite blade pairing with the Rocca. The Rocca is kind of right there on my personal comfort limit because I shave every day. I would consider the Rocca a medium aggression razor. With the Filoso blade and riding the top cap a little bit, it definitely tames it nicely, especially with a nice dense cushions tallow soap like we're using. But of all the medium aggressive razors that I've used, the Rocca is my favorite. I tried the 921, I tried the Outlaw Evo, the Lambdas, and this is the one that really stood out to me, and I said, yep, that's the one I want. After I used Lee Nunez, was kind enough to loan me his. I did some reviews on that one. That one just had the stainless steel black handle. Nice pass there. Let me get cleaned up under the nose. Very comparable. There's a tiny bit more here on the Rocca side, but I don't think I skin stretched quite as much. All right, let me get rinsed up and we'll go over the razors a little bit here and I'll give you my 2 cents on everything. I'll be right back. All right, I'm all rinsed up. I'm just gonna put on some witch hazel while we're talking here. I found out after, like I said, I didn't know that Doug was gonna send me the sample of the soap. And I found out once I got it and loved the scent of it, he does make an aftershave splash, so I ordered that off of him. And my daughter doesn't know it yet, but he also makes a bar soap in this same Homestead Barbeeshop scent. So I ordered that for her because she likes the bar soaps. And it's funny, she does like girly smells, but every once in a while, if I get a manly bar soap or something like that, she'll confiscate them and she likes them. So she'll be thrilled to get that. So I look forward to getting the splash, long story short. So what do I think of these two razors and how did they compare? Boy, I gotta say, those Filosos made both of these really, really nice today. This was a fantastic shave. And, you know, simply put, I'd give a slight edge to the Wolfman just because it is a little bit less blade feel and a little bit smoother. With the Rocca, it's definitely a little bit spicier. You know, if I ride the top cap a little more, it manages it just right there. But I would put both of these razors kind of in that same category where, yes, I can obviously use them, you know, for a daily shave as I did today. But if I was to use them day in, day out, day after day type thing, they're a little bit much for me. I can do them like 2, maybe even 3 days in a row. But then after that, then I need kind of a more mild razor or take a day off to give my face, especially my neck, my lower neck here is what gets irritated easily. And both of these would kind of fall into that. If I have a very light touch and a great soap with the 8.4 plate, I get awesome shaves off of this Wolfman 8.4. I really like the 8.4. You know, for me, I've used the Game Changer 8.4 and if I remember right, this is way more efficient because if you go back to my video of the Game Changer 8.4 comparison, I think I compared it to the Game Changer 6.8. Even the 8.4 plate I couldn't get BBS with if I remember right. So this one is definitely a lot more efficiency and I love that I don't have to buff and buff and buff with this 8.4. Super light touch, just gets it done, really pleasurable shave experience. The Rocca, as I mentioned a couple of times, I mean, that's just as classy as it looks with that birch wood handle to me. That just jumped off the page the first time I saw it. I'm like, whoa, what's that? Is that a custom handle? Like, no, it comes that way. So you can get it in other finishes if you don't like this wood, like I said, and the price point jumps down almost to it. Like, I think you can get the non-birch handle for about $100. So, you know, that kind of brings the price point a little more similarly. So, you know, kind of depends on what you like. If you like a more medium aggression razor with a little more blade feel, audible feedback through the roof, the Muhle Rocca is just something special. It's just elegant. It has a great feel in the hand. The blade alignment and everything on this newest version 1 is just fantastic. I really love the Wolfman though. I like all the sweet different colors you can get. And this 8.4 plate really surprised me because on paper I figured the 6.9 plate, you know, as I've used, was more than enough. And I was kind of apprehensive to try the 8.4, but I like to try the more aggressive ones because as I've learned on certain razors, the things get smoother. Even though it's more aggressive for me, I feel that because the efficiency is being cranked up, that the razor just tends to just slice and slide through the hair more efficiently, and that's why it gets smoother. Sometimes, though, there is that diminishing point of return where it's smoother until it's not, until I get to my across the grain on my mustache and against the grain on the mustache. Sometimes that's where it gets too aggressive and it'll be smooth until I get to that point. And these ones don't do that. These ones I can complete the across the grain and against the grain. The Wolfman was smoother and a little bit more manageable for me. I have to mind my P's and Q's with the blade on the against the grain pass on the Rocca just a little bit. But with that Filoso blade, excellent pairing. I really like both of these razors for different kind of categories, weight-wise as well. You know, it really just depends on what you like the look of. But if you're familiar with the Rocca or you're familiar with the Wolfman and you're curious how these two compare, well, there it is. The next one I'm going to compare the 8.4 plate. you got to compare it to the Razor Rock Game Changer 84 plate. I mean, that just makes the most sense, right? So another buddy is going to loan me that, and it's on the way, so I look forward to comparing that. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Have a great weekend, gentlemen. Check out my comment section for all the information, and I've got some razors for sale, and any discount codes or anything I've got, you're more than welcome to. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody.